How's it going, guys, and welcome to the 4-Mile Ranch YouTube channel. So bottom line up front, is the ATN X Sight II HD 3 to 14 power worth your money? In my opinion, after having it for a year, yes, it is definitely well worth every penny. However, there's some pros and cons that I definitely want to point out that may be a deal breaker or a deal maker for you. So also a quick disclaimer, I'm not going to be getting into the features of this optic. I have posted a full-length review. I will put a link in the description below to that, as well as some links if you would care to see the full hunting footage with this optic. So one of my biggest initial issues that I had with this scope that I learned very fast was the battery life was pretty terrible when using the internal batteries. So this scope will hold 4 AA batteries. So when you're using any kind of standard AA batteries, I was personally not experiencing more than roughly 2 hours runtime, which obviously that is terrible if you're like me and you're using this optic for hunting, which is definitely its primary purpose, in my opinion, that it's marketed towards. You don't want the scope to die in the middle of your hunt. You obviously want to leave your optic on for the duration of your hunt in case you see something. So that just wasn't going to fly with me. Now, yes, there's been some comments in my other updates to this. ATN does in fact have a remedy to this. They have an external battery pack, that this cap right here where you can put your memory card or connect a micro HDMI to. It also has a port that you can feed external power. So what ATN has is a battery pack kit where they will sell you the cable, a battery, and a little pouch to put the battery on the stock of whatever rifle that you're using this with. However, they want $100 for that. And in my opinion, after you've already invested money in this scope, that really wasn't gonna cut it for me. And you may be on the same boat that you don't want to spend any more than you need to. So my initial solution for that was to take a battery pack intended for charging cell phones or electronic devices on the go and just routing that directly to the scope. And what I did, it was very rudimentary. It was tacky, it was ugly, I hated it, but it worked. I just zip tied that battery pack to the handguard of my AR-15. Looked bad, but it worked. So I went from that setup to finally upgrading the cable to a nice 90-degree plug that would go straight in. And as you can see right here, there's actually a 3D printed cap that fit perfectly for the scope. It was made for this scope. Now this was sold by Fox Optic. It was on eBay for only $15 for both the cap and the cable. I thought that was an awesome deal. However, since then, Fox Optic has no longer been listing that on eBay. They sell an entire kit, which again is a little bit more money than some people may want to spend. But I will put that information for you guys down in the description if you want to go this route. So my latest fix to the whole battery life issue is this right here. Some Kentley batteries, and these are rechargeable batteries, so you don't have to burn through them. And basically you can find these on Amazon for anywhere to $40 to $45. It'll come with this whole kit with the charger and everything. And pretty much every review on Amazon is guys using these for the ATN X Sight. So this was recommended by people in my comment section on my previous update videos. And so I went ahead and checked it out for myself. People in the reviews are claiming that it has lasted a full 8 hours of using the scope without having to be recharged. So far so good. And I really like the fact that these will keep the scope running for your entire hunt without having to have any more bulk or any more weight on your gun, whether it's ATN solution or my kind of do-it-yourself solution to keeping the scope up and running. And the reason I find that this is extremely important for me now is going to be the second update to this scope. So to take advantage of one of the coolest features of this scope, which is the different profiles where you can save a great number of zeros within the scope, I have finally mounted this to an ARMS number 17 QD mount. This mount works perfectly with the ATN X Sight. In fact, I do believe this is what the Thor thermal scopes have. What is also compatible is the ARMS number 35, which is a double lever. The 17 is just a single lever. I have not had any issues with this coming loose with just the one throw lever, but they do also have a double lever option. They have the LaRue LT270 that'll work with this, as well as the American Defense Mount 170. So there are other options, but the reason I went with this is because you can find this mount on eBay used for $30. Now if you buy these new, they'll be $100, and if you do the double throw lever, they can get a little bit more expensive. For $30, we now have a quick detach setup to where I can now interchange this from gun to gun and just switch the profile that I have saved in the scope, which is really the only way to fully take advantage of that feature on this scope, unless you're just changing your different loads for the scope, which obviously you can do that as well. I do want to point out, if you do go to an aftermarket mount, you will not be able to use the included screws with your factory base. I will have information in the description, or I will actually throw it right here on the screen for you guys what screws to have, just so you don't mess it up. But you cannot use the screws that come with it because they will be too long and stick out of your mount. Due to the fact that this is now a QD setup, I just leave the IR illuminator on the scope so that I don't have to worry about also attaching and detaching that to whatever rifle I'm going to put it on. I just leave it on the scope. It is a little less convenient than if you have this on an AR-15 handguard, to where it's a little bit more ergonomic to turn it on, but the convenience for me is worth it. All I have to do is pop this on from the back when I'm ready, and it's good to go. It works for me, may not work for you, but this is how I'm currently running this scope. Now, while we're on the subject of the illuminator, this is not the one that came with it. I've already kind of explained why I've gone with this, but a quick recap if this is your first time stopping by the channel. This is the stock illuminator. I had no issues with this. It gave me more than adequate distance to spot with this scope. However, I currently have a setup for 18650 rechargeable batteries that I use in a lot of my flashlights, and that would not fit in here. So this will take two CR123 batteries, and it has an advertised runtime on high of 2 hours. So if you're familiar with those batteries, they actually cost about $5 for 2 batteries, which is a little steep as well. Again, I tried to be as cost effective with this setup as possible without really breaking the bank. So if every time you're hunting, it's costing you an extra $5 on batteries, that may be kind of a deal breaker to you. So what I did is I bought this aftermarket illuminator for $40 on Amazon as well, and it's compatible with my rechargeable batteries. So how much I've used it over the course of the year, it's already paid for itself in terms of being able to reuse the batteries. As far as if the beam on this is better than the stock, I wouldn't say it's much better, if any better, but the convenience, again, for me to be able to use rechargeable batteries made it well worth it. All right, so now let's get into some pros and cons. So we'll start with the pros. I have never had any kind of issue with losing zero with this optic. It has stayed true to its zero. I also have never had any kind of issue with the scope shutting off during use. One thing that I'm not that thrilled with, but I'll take it for what it's worth because it is a digital night vision scope, the image quality is not nearly as clear as ATN advertises on their website. So the images that they have displayed for the ATN X Sight in no way really look the way this thing does in real life. I'm not saying it's terrible, it's just this thing is advertised as a 1080p scope, and when you really export the video, I would not really call it 1080p resolution. It gets pretty grainy, and especially when you zoom in, it is a digital zoom. So again, take it for what it's worth, guys. I mean, just like when you zoom in really high magnification with your cell phone, it gets blurry because it's a digital zoom. It's not an optical zoom, but it still works as long as you're using this for hunting and you can still see the shape of the animal. Even when zoomed in at full magnification, you can use it to make a more precise shot where you want it to go. So it works, it's just not as clear as they kind of lead you to believe based on their website images. Another thing I've kind of encountered is that this rubber cap on the back has a tendency to pop off pretty easy. So there's been a couple situations where I was driving around in my truck and I see some pigs crossing a field, and I get out real fast, grab the gun, and this thing pops off without me noticing. And then in the rush of the moment, if you are used to kind of feeling this touching against your eyebrow and you don't notice, you'll get some scope eye with this thing, especially depending on what kind of caliber you're mounting this to. So that is something that you kind of got to be aware of, just situational awareness, which some are better than others at that. That's definitely probably more on me, but I do want to point out that this thing does pop off quite easily, but it is also easily reattached. So it's not really a huge issue, but it is something I want to point out. One statement I kind of want to retract that was negative from one of my previous updates is that I was complaining that when you hit the power button, sometimes you have to fumble with it a little bit more than what I would like to do. Now, I completely take that statement back because I learned that it was actually this battery pack. So if I had it plugged into this battery pack and I hit the power button, nothing would happen. Essentially, I figured out that I had to re-plug the wire back in to kind of take the battery out of a sleep mode, I guess, and then the scope would power on. Now that I've moved away from this, as soon as I hit the power button, the scope is instantly responsive and it comes to life. There is no fumbling around anymore. It clicks right on. And so I want to retract that statement, and I do apologize for giving misinformation based on my previous setup. The only other recommendation I can really give at this point in time is that I always leave this front cap that has the hole in it on my objective lens. And it really doesn't affect any kind of light collection at night. However, during the day, I do get a little bit of glare if I'm facing a sunset while shooting with this thing not on. So I just leave it on full time so I don't have to worry about it. Other than that, there's not much to say. It has come down in price from the last I've seen. When I originally invested in this, the scope was still at the full MSRP price of $599 plus tax, depending on where you get it. But now I've seen it in the lower 500s on Amazon. I'll go ahead and put that link in the description below. There are also periodic sales, so be on the lookout in other locations for this optic. It is definitely not at the full 600, so don't pay the full 600, guys. Make sure you do your homework and try to find the best deals. And that makes it an even sweeter deal when you're not having to pay that full price anymore to get this awesome scope. And even though the scope is getting a little bit older now, ATN does post firmware updates to where the technology inside is always up to date. I'm trying to keep this as short and sweet as I possibly can, guys. But all in all, this scope has probably been the single most best investment I've ever made in terms of hunting equipment. It is a complete and total game changer. I have been hunting for years and years, and my typical setup was going where I knew there would be animals in activity around sunset, hoping that they would be there and trying to take that shot before I lost too much light. Now that I have this, I am just amazed by how much activity really goes on at night, especially if you live in Texas like I do and have feral hogs. They are absolutely everywhere. There's so many more hogs out there than what are just at your feeders at sundown. They're in fields all over the place, and this thing has been, I mean, the best way I can put it, guys, is just a total game changer. And it's honestly been a lot of fun to just have the ability to see in the dark and to, I guess, quote unquote, own the night, guys. So as always, guys, I hope this was helpful. Thank you for stopping by the 4Mile Ranch YouTube channel. If you have any questions about this optic whatsoever, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer any and all questions that you guys have. And have a good one, guys.